Okay. My problem is I can't see. Okay, that's good. Keep me out of trouble. All right. Welcome back, or welcome for the first time. So now we have a little bit of understanding. If you missed the first part, we just really talked about the fact that no matter how expensive your hearing devices are, we can make it less bad. And usually the limitation is sometimes the hardware, but many times what the manufacturer will allow me to do with the software. So we're going to try a different approach. We are going to try to use the free software that we were all born with, which is this, our brain. Now, if you don't have one of these papers yet, please come get one. They're here at the front table. Yes, okay. All right. Now, I want, every time I talk with a person who has a hearing loss, who's not satisfied with how they hear music, I ask them a very important question. Would you agree that one of the primary reasons we like music is that when we hear music, we feel a feeling, or we have an emotion? Would you agree that that's one of the primary reasons we listen to music? And everybody has their favorite songs, right? Okay. I don't want you to think about your favorite song in terms of, my favorite song is Vivaldi's Summer, performed by the London Philharmonic in 1930. Vivaldi's Summer makes me feel what? Okay? So I want you to think about, and on the back of your paper, if you have a pen, write down your 5 favorite songs and how they make you feel. And it doesn't have to be a fancy song. It can be like last night, Leave, that song. I don't know all of it, but you'd all seem to know it and it seemed to be fun. And so it doesn't matter what the song is. And the thing about music is there are some people who have very fancy music taste, and there's some people who like the music in the pubs. It's all the same value, the pubs, the music in the pubs. Like last night, the conga line. If you can get 100 people in a line doing this, it's a good song. It's a very simple song, but it's a good song because you all had the same feeling and you all had a big smile. It's a good song. Okay, so think about, you don't have to maybe write it down, but think about those favorite 5 songs. Now, if you started to have those as your favorite songs before your hearing loss, there may be 2 emotions. I used to feel happy, and now I feel sad. Yes?
Ik heb geen pen, zou ik een pen mogen?
I don't know if we have a bunch of pens or not. Does anybody have extra pens? I should have brought pens. So put one more. So sometimes the original impression of the song was one thing, and now, because our hearing or our hearing technology or our audiologist is interfering with that sound, and we have a different emotion. But I want you to think about the main emotion that your favorite song used to make you feel. Okay? And the reason I want you to think about it in that term is because it doesn't matter what that music was. As we said earlier in the speech, music will be different with hearing loss. And so I'd like us to begin to change our definition of music from it must be the London Symphony Philharmonic or it's garbage to I want to feel happy. If I can find new music that makes me feel as happy as Vivaldi's Summer, maybe I'll be okay. Okay? So we're going to try to shift our focus away from what I can no longer hear, what sounds funny, what the audiologist can't figure out how to fix. We're going to say, you know what? Let's take a few minutes, hours, years. Let's take some time and let's start from measuring what we can do now. Because it doesn't matter what happened before. Now is now. We may come back to this, but now is now. And if we don't know what we can do now, we cannot make a map back to there. So if I am lost in the woods, and I know the coordinates of my home, but I don't know the coordinates of where I am, even Google Maps will have a hard time finding me. So I have to turn my location setting on in my life, and I have to evaluate where am I standing now so that the computer can tell me to go over here. Does that make sense? Okay. So what do I know after doing this for a long time? All the instruments don't sound the same. Completely. But there is no yes or no. There is a grade. So what we're going to do is we're going to listen to different music now, but we're going to listen to the same little bit of music with different instruments. Now, in the old times, I would have a wheeling cart with a whole pile of instruments. But now, the Japanese helped me make good technology. I don't have to carry too many instruments. I have a computer. So the instruments that we're going to listen to were recorded from real instruments. And then they made a computer version of them. So they're very, very natural sounding to me. How they sound to you, we're going to find out. And that's what this paper is for. So we're going to, at some point, agree on a few seconds of music that we all are familiar with. And then, for each time I play that music, I'm going to ask you some questions. Can you hear the rhythm? So does everybody familiar with the song Fly Me to the Moon, Frank Sinatra? Fly me to the moon and let me stay among the stars. Okay. Can you hear the rhythm of it? If you cannot hear the rhythm, we are in big trouble, because that's very easy. If your hearing aid can't make you hear rhythm, your audiologist needs to go back to school. That's very easy. Now, but I don't want you to say yes or no. I want you to say, I completely don't hear the rhythm. That's number one. Or I absolutely hear the rhythm. Every time it goes, I hear it. That's a 5. So we're going to use that scale for each one of these. Because sometimes it might be a strong, yes, I very much hear that. I don't know, a little here, a little there. So we're going to do this for each one. The next one, I can hear individual pitches. So sometimes I will play ba 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 ba, and somebody will hear ba 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 ba. They hear the rhythm, but they can't hear the pitch. Or sometimes you can hear far away pitches, but not close pitches. So we're going to do that. Do you know what instrument I'm playing? Now you're going to know by looking here, but does it sound like what the paper says? How true is that? And finally, it sounds like I remember. So if the paper says I'm playing a trumpet, and it sounds like a trumpet to you, and you remember what a trumpet sounds like, then that would be a 5. If you hear pitches, and I'm telling you it's a trumpet, and you're like, I'll believe you, but I don't think it is, then it's a 3 or something. Does that make sense? Everybody get that? Okay. Are we good to use Fly Me to the Moon? Yeah? Okay. All right. Now, what I'd like for you to do after we're done with this is take this paper. Yes.
I'm connected to your microphone.
Yes. The loop. Do you have loop? Do you have microphone plus telecoil?
I have
Telecoil.
with your microphone. I'm direct
Yes.
connected.
Only.
To play the music, I have to change my ear.
Okay. Then.
To the amp.
Okay. Okay. Do you mind doing that?
Yeah, I switched now. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
I want to do this, but I need a pen.
Okay.
There's somebody a pen for me. Oh yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you. Okay. So, the idea at the end of this is you take this paper home and you're going to look, and the instrument that has the highest numbers consistently would be the instrument that right now you hear the best. It may be an instrument that you've always listened to and you love. It may be an instrument that you never thought was even an instrument. It doesn't matter. Because what we're going to do for the next 2 years, I'm not kidding, is you're going to go to the world of the internet and you're going to find music that you have never heard before that features the instruments that you can hear, plus the tag for them, the emotions of your top 5. So you have a happy playlist, a sad playlist, an excited playlist, a party playlist, and maybe your best instrument happens to be cello. But you never listen to cello. You are listening to the rock and roll, but you happen to hear cello best. Okay, so you go to Spotify or Apple Music or whatever, you search cello plus happy. And you see, I've never heard of that person be good. Do you know why? Because now it sounds like it always did, because it's the first time you heard it. So you don't have the grief and the melancholy of, oh, it's not the same, I wish it was the same, I missed it. It tells you where you are today. Now, you do this for a while and you get really good at hearing music that features the cello, and then you say, I think I'm doing pretty well. What's the next one on my list? Oh, saxophone. Happy plus saxophone, sad plus, and you begin to build a new world of music that is fresh and new to you, and therefore it's always the same as it always was. And what's happening in the meantime is, if you have new cochlear implants or new adjustments on your hearing aids, or you are becoming more mature in your listening skills. So we're getting better and better and better. But also, we have changed our focus. We're not looking back, we're looking forward. And we are realizing that no matter how much I love my old record collection, there's new records at the shop all the time. Maybe I can have a sound plus an emotion for something new. If you're old and grumpy, maybe it will take you more time. But if you truly want to experience music, there's a lot of music out there. Now, my son is deaf. He doesn't use much hearing technology at all, for a lot of reasons. But he has a really good sense of rhythm. And he has an interesting way to feel vibration, that when he was younger, and I played an alto saxophone, if he sat on the floor and I put that saxophone on his head, he could feel the vibrations and he could tell the difference between jazz and blues. Maybe there's a different way for you to experience music than the way you always have. And my challenge for you is to ignore everything that your audiologist has ever told you they can do. I can make it just like it was. Probably not. And let's open our minds. So let's do a little experiment, and let's see how we do, okay? So, I will give you, we have how many people with cochlear implants? Okay, just a quick little reality check on cochlear implants. In 25 years of doing this, this is how many months since you got activated? This is when I really start to mess around with the programming for music. I don't say you can't have music before then, but until we get way out here, 2-3 years, I don't know where you are in your ability to hear complicated things until you get very good with speech, and then very good with speech and noise, and those are gives me prediction. We absolutely do music throughout the entire process, but we don't go too crazy about it. In American Sign Language, we have a sign. This is to obsess. We take it at a pace, but it's way out here. So if you're only 6 months out from activation and you don't like the symphony, relax. Relax. It's coming. Okay. So here's what we already went through this. So now I've created an online version of this if you want to share this with friends as well. It doesn't have great scoring yet, but we're getting there. So if you do it and you say, hey, I did this, can I have my score? You can email me. I will eventually have it so it'll pop up your score. But if you scan this QR code, this will go through exactly what we're about to do, but it has pre-recorded samples for you. Okay? All right. So, fly me to the moon. All right. Let me get myself connected here. I will apologize in advance for the first sample, which is my voice. It's not very good, but if you have really poor hearing, you probably won't have it. I once was doing sign-to-voice interpreting for my local deaf club, and it was a talent contest, and this guy decided he was going to do our national anthem. He was very verbose, and he insisted that I be his voice because he didn't want a lady to be his voice. And so I did it, and my friend turned to me and signed, "You have a very good voice." And I said, "You're deaf." And he's like, "Good point." Okay. All right. Here we go. Are we all ready? This is number one. Ba 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 ba. Now, did you hear a pattern, a rhythm? Yes, no, how much? Were there individual pitches, or was it that? Did you recognize that it might be a human being making that voice? The last one is irrelevant because you don't know me very well. So, all right. But now, let's talk about musical instruments. Your hearing system, whether it's a hearing aid or a cochlear implant, was designed to represent the human voice. How does my voice make ah? Well, I have these two little things called vocal cords or vocal folds, and they go brrr. And if you just put a microphone next to them, you will hear ee. It's just a buzz. That's all it is. But then my throat is a tube. And that tube creates patterns of resonation, what we call resonance, which is boosting some sounds more than others. And that tube is like the inside of my nose, and the sound can be absorbed into those tissues. So it doesn't bounce around, it's very absorptive. So I have a double reed, long tube that's absorptive, which is just like a bassoon. So a bassoon.
Dat is die vergod.
Yeah, a bassoon. I guess I should have had pictures of these.
Yeah, for me.
So a bassoon, we are going to play Fly Me to the Moon, and we're going to see how well we do compared to the other one. Here we go. There we go. Let me get unhooked here. Okay, so we're going to do that same rating based on that. Did you hear a pattern? Did you hear individual pitches? Did you hear that it sounded like a bassoon? If you've never heard a bassoon, sure, I'll take your word for it. There's an old piece of music that Prokofiev did called Peter and the Wolf, and it has a story that goes with it. It's for children, for them to learn the different instruments. And I'm working on a version of that with this that I will do with sign language interpreters and captioning and all that kind of stuff. And we'll make a video of that at some point. Okay, so everybody done with the bassoon? Okay. The next one is a cello. My interpreters know cello, that's good. So, now, a cello is not like a human voice in the generation of the sound, but it's like the human voice in the pitch range, in the volume range, and it's also a very absorptive sound. Okay, so these instruments were selected in a range beginning very similar to the human voice and going very far away from the human voice. Okay. However, that's the academic assumption. I have no idea how well you're going to hear. You might surprise me, and you might surprise yourself, and that's the whole point. Okay. Next, we have a bass clarinet. So it's a clarinet that took extra hormones and grew too big. Okay. Now some people are saying, these all sound exactly the same. That's okay. That's okay. We're finding where we are.
It's a different instrument, I suppose.
It is. But it may not be yet to you. May not be. So if it may be that remember the pattern of the trumpet and it may be that we have to get very far apart in the pattern before it sounds different to you. And that's why we're doing this. We're simply making a map for you to say what I can hear well, what I can hear less well, what I can't hear at all. So that now you have information to make choices about how much emotional effort you want to put into chasing each of these sounds. And if you're fairly new, if you're less than 5 years out from an activation on your cochlear implant, I think there's still progress to be made. So don't be discouraged. Okay. Now, the little brother of the bassoon is the oboe. Yes?
I don't mean to interrupt, but I've heard the instrument. I can say here, okay, I hear the rhythm, I hear different pitches,
Yes.
and so on. I'm getting good results. and yet I don't recognise Fly Me to the Moon. I couldn't
Okay.
say what you're singing at all.
That's okay. Okay, that's fine, that's fine.
Okay.
Okay. We'll have to buy, I'm gonna have to buy you a book of jazz standards so that when I come to Finland to do this talk, you'll score better. Okay. Okay, so the oboe is mechanically the same as a bassoon. It's just smaller. And when we make things smaller, the pitch goes up. Okay? Now, interestingly enough, people with hearing aids who are on their way to have a cochlear implant generally have very poor hearing for high pitches and better hearing for bass or low pitches. However, people who get cochlear implants have much better hearing for high pitches than they do for low pitches, which is why they understand speech better, but the low end may not be there. So interestingly enough, a person with a hearing aid may like the bassoon, where a person with a cochlear implant may like the oboe. I don't care what you like. I just want you to know what you can hear so that you can make choices, so that I am no longer in control of your world of sound. That's my goal. Okay, next. The little sister of the cello, the violin. Now the violin's a little hard because there's a little vibrato in there, which you're like, am I hearing the instrument or is my ear being funny? I don't know. All right, if we take a bass clarinet and we put it in the washing machine with hot water, it would become a clarinet. And now, from a predictory position, the range is pretty good for most people. And the hearing aids and the cochlear implants, it's kind of in that sweet spot. It might be good, might not, I don't know. Okay, now we're going to start to get into instruments that have a surface on the inside that makes sound bounce around. These are metal instruments now. And so the inside doesn't absorb sound anymore like the vocal tract, it reflects sound. Now, that could be good, it could be bad, we don't know. This is why we're doing the exercise. So this is a flute. If you wear cochlear implants, you probably heard something. If you're wearing hearing aids, you may not have heard anything at all. All right. So now we have an instrument that is kind of in the middle. It has a vibration starter, a reed, but only one. It's metal, but the pieces that close off different notes are leather. So it's some part reflective and some part absorptive, but it has a fairly low sound. It's a tenor saxophone. The most important lesson I learned in my audiology training came 10 years after I graduated, where my mentor told me that the best answer you can give a patient is, I don't know, let's measure that. All right, next. A big instrument that has a lot of reflective sound, a trombone. I know that the interpreters know this because they were jamming out the other night with it. All right. If instead of changing the notes by making the tube longer and shorter, which the trombone does, we change the notes by opening and closing different parts of it, we make a trumpet. Okay. Now, I have a very good friend. I talked about him the other night. He made the Google visualizer. He can only hear the highest note, the highest pitch he can hear is the last note on the left side of a piano. And he can hear lower notes than that, but no hearing aid can make that happen, and no cochlear implant can make that happen.
Which note on the piano?
The left, all the way to the left side. On the left side of the piano is a boom, 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 the bass notes, and on the top it's ding, 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 ding. Okay. So I made him a recording of a tuba playing Happy Birthday, and he sent back a note that said, "Thank you very much. I can see it on my screen, but it's too high." So I made it 1 octave lower, and he says, "It's still a little too high." And so I made a double contrabass tuba for him in the computer. But we're going to use a regular tuba. So this is a trumpet that got very fat. Maybe it's good, maybe it's not. I don't know. Okay, so now the last one. If you have hearing aids made in the last 25 years, or you have a cochlear implant, you have a thing on your head that takes a sound, which is a movement of energy called analog, and it makes it digital, which is a computer 1 or a 0. Now, interestingly enough, even though the microphones are analog, sometimes some people with cochlear implants hear purely digital instruments better than analog instruments, because their hearing is now digital. So this next one is a very classic synthesizer from the old days, where they made a sound by turning on a wave, and then they would adjust parameters. The synthesizer was the size of this wall. It was all plugs and holes. So we'll try this last synthesizer, and then we'll talk about what we're going to do with this information. And I always find it interesting when I play that last one. Some people go, "Oh, now I can finally hear something." And oftentimes you could go to the what do they call pawn shops here, and you buy a cheap Casio keyboard from 1975. It sounds great, because where you are now is very limited. So if the sound is too complex, it overdoes your system. Okay, so now we look at all this, and what are we going to do with this? Okay. Raise your hand if the music that you have liked in the past could be classified as classical music. How many classical people do we have here? A few. Okay. How about jazz? Okay. How about rock and roll? Okay. How about folk music? Folk music, okay. How about just drums, like ethnic music? Okay. All right, the reason I'm asking these questions is because each of these kinds of music has different patterns of instruments and how the music is put together. Okay. Is there anybody here, only raise your hand, if for the first column I hear the rhythm, they said no to everything? Anybody? Was there anybody here who did not hear any rhythm at all? Good. We'll have a starting point. We have a ground to stand on.
Do you have people in the...
Sometimes yes. Sometimes people who had who needed a cochlear implant 30 years ago who didn't get it, their hearing is shot, and they don't have any perception. It's very rare, but sometimes. Okay. Are there any people who only heard one note or one pitch? Good. So everybody heard at least a couple of different pitches. That's good. Okay. Recognizing the instrument. Anybody not recognize any of them? Not always. Yeah. Did you recognize differences between the instruments? Did everybody recognize? Maybe I don't know what it is, but it sounded different than the other ones. Okay, those are all good things. Okay, good.
And doubts. Many times you doubt.
Yeah. And the middle is good. The middle that gives us place. Okay. Now, did anybody think that any of those are just like it was back then? I didn't think so. That's what I expect. Maybe one or two. Okay. So, here's the thing. We can all do rhythm, which means that we can all have a successful experience listening to music that is entirely rhythm-based, which means that all Caribbean drum music is accessible to you. All African drum music is accessible to you. All Japanese taiko drum music is accessible to you. And so if I'm playing, you can hear that. I know you can hear that. You just told me you can hear that. And you can feel what I just felt. And if I go, ba, ba, boom, 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 you can hear that. And you can experience that. So you definitely have one, what we call genre, one category of music that everybody in this room can be successful with. So if you feel that you can no longer experience music, you just proved yourself wrong. So you have the drums. Now, almost everybody here could hear some variation of pitch. Now, the orchestra is very small in the pitches that it uses. We call that chromatic, C-H-R-O-M-A-T-I-C, chromatic. So, da 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 da, like that. A sharp, B, okay? That's very hard to hear because the differences are so small. So, for example, we'll use this one. Tell me, raise your hand if you hear the difference between these two notes. Okay, that's called an octave. It's the biggest separation we use in music. Tell me if you hear this. Three different notes, right? Okay. Now you have a half octave. You get a badge. Half octave club. Tell me if you hear this. Ba, 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 ba. Now you are in the arpeggio club. A-R-P-E-G-G-I-O club. A-R-P-E-G-G-I-O. Arpeggio. Okay, now listen again. How many notes different sounds did you hear? 8? 8. That means that you now can hear the whole scale. It's okay. Is it different? Are they all different? But they're wrong. That's okay. Because the difference is the point. Now, the last one. That's the chromatic. That's 16 different notes in that group. That's really hard. Now, if you did all the way up to the last one before that, 8 notes, you can pretty much listen to any kind of music, because most of them are in that group. If you were stuck maybe at the arpeggio, there's a limited number of notes in something called the diatonic scale, D-I-A-T-O-N-I-C, the diatonic scale. So, if I were playing, and for example, give me 1 second. If I was playing an American Indian flute, wooden flute, most of that music, or a recorder, people are familiar with recorders, the little that they give the children, that is a limited scale called diatonic. And so if you are somewhere between, I hear the arpeggio well, but the full scale's a little mushy, you can listen to more simple music, recorder music, folk music, that sort of thing. So when you know where you are, and you know how big the area is that you can be successful in right now, you can now select more accurately which music has a higher probability that you will be successful with it. And if you choose music that you don't know at all, you don't have the burden of remembering it's not, as you say, I'm hearing it wrong. No, you're not. You're hearing it for the first time. It has to be right. It's right for you today. Okay? I used to worry about the size of my trousers, how many inches around. And now I just worry, do they fit? I don't look at the number anymore. It fits, so I'm going to wear it. And part of it is I'm getting older and I don't care that I've gotten fat. But part of it is everybody who makes trousers has the size slightly different. So there's an old, I'm a motorcycle rider, there's an old expression in motorcycles, you buy the motorcycle that fits. I want this one, but it's the wrong motorcycle. I'm here, it's comfortable, I'm going to buy this motorcycle, okay? So I want you to listen to the music that fits. I want you to listen to the music that gets you from sound to the emotions that you want to hear, your playlist, with the least trouble. Not the easiest, the least hard. Because as much as I'm encouraging, as much as I want to be positive, know BS here, no bullshit, sorry for the language, but I will not lie to you. You will have a harder time with music than I will until I have a hearing loss. But, as we have already proven, this group of people has far superior musical ability than most of my patients. Because the majority of the people that I do this work with can't hear the arpeggio. So you're doing really well. There's probably 10,000 pieces of music that you have never heard that I feel very confident that you have access to based on what you just told me. Not bad, huh? Not bad. And you didn't have to book an appointment with the audiologist. All you have to do is be open to the reality that you will have to do this slowly and you will have to work at it. And if you decide that I really want to listen to folk music, just like when you started listening with your cochlear implant, you heard one word, one word, one word, now 3 words, now 3 words, now 2 people saying one. You're going to build this up. So if you like folk music, I would encourage you to listen to a guy named Pete Seeger, S-E-E-G-E-R. First of all, he has a very nice voice. It's a nice baritone. He sings with a nice quiet, low pitch. But he also only plays the guitar or the banjo alone. There's not a lot of stuff going on. It's his voice and a little bit of music underneath. Yes.
You advise watch and listen, or only listen live?
I advise you to do the best that you can do, and if that means watching and listening, then watch and listen. If you want to lift more heavy weights and you want to practice listening blind, go for it. Here's what I don't want you to do. I don't want you to create a program that makes you exhausted. I don't want you to make this a second job that you don't get paid for, unless you happen to be a musician. I want you to use this as the dessert that you have after dinner. It's a really nice aperitif after dinner. I want you to say, I've got up in the morning, I put on my hearing aid, my cochlear implant, I go to work, and I work 10 times harder than everybody else just to hear what's going on. I want you to go home and say, oh, you know what? Diatonic scale, absorptive, Indian flute. I want this to be your massage at the end of the day. Okay? Now, if you say, I'm type A personality, I want to work on, go for it. Make a small piece of time every day. But also try, if you can, to think about children who listen to music. What do they do when they listen to music? What were you doing last night when you were listening? Playing. You were dancing, you were feeling, you were being free. So I try to be better, yes, but give yourself grace and give yourself permission to be a child and to play with music. Make sense? Yeah. Other questions? So the point of this slide is to kind of show you some of the, and I would play it, but it's distorted, so I won't, but if you have just a voice, it's very easy. If you have 2 voices, it's a little more hard. If you have 1 voice and 1 guitar, it's a little harder than 1 voice, and a little harder than 2 voices. But if you have 2 voices and 1 guitar and 1 piano, it's even more hard. So build up to it. Okay? And experience the world of music, not the world of music. Okay? Back in the day, we had records. And if you had a record collection, sometimes you would say, this is my happy side, and everybody organized their records differently. But you ran out of space eventually. It's the digital world now. The entire internet is a record collection. Now, I will warn you one thing. If you stream your music to your device, understand that generally speaking, that signal will be compressed, called MP3. MP3 is nice for the Spotify people because it's very small and it costs less to move it across the internet. Bandwidth. However, MP3 is a compression, which means it is a distortion. So whenever possible, try to listen to sounds that are what we call uncompressed. There's two kinds you will see. It says WAV, W-A-V, or A-I-F-F. Those are the Apple sort of uncompressed stuff. So when you're looking for music, you can usually download it compressed or uncompressed. Yes?
I'm a musician lover.
Yeah.
I can advise people here, use a CD. And what you say, MP3 is more worse than...
Yes, much more worse.
Yeah, and also use a sub-pack. I don't know if you know that device is percussion and bass tone.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't understand. What we use a...
What's the device called?
The device I meant is called a sub-pack. It's a cushion, and it gives vibrations with percussion and bass tones. And combined with old videos from MTV.
Yeah.
I can watch and enjoy music very much.
Oh, okay, great. So it's like a vibrating, like a subwoofer. Yeah. So the other thing to think about is the system that you use to listen. Now, here's the interesting thing. If I have hearing aids and I stream my music to my hearing aids, the logic, the audiology logic is you will have the best quality because it's streamed. But the speaker in your hearing aid is this big. It's 2 millimeters wide. Use your home speakers. And I will even argue, maybe if you can, if you have enough hearing, get some earphones. Take off the hearing aids, if you can.
I don't think my neighbor would like it.
No, with earphones. Okay? Sometimes the earphone is better than the hearing aid, sometimes it's not. If you have a cochlear implant, you're kind of stuck. But you can stream, in the cochlear implant situation, it's better to stream because you're not using the microphone to pick up the sound twice, kind of a thing. The point of it all is, and this is, we're running out of time, so we're going to do the big summary here. The bad news is that music, at the very reality level, it will be different. However, if you have a cochlear implant, you remember you first had it turned on, and somebody said something, and you heard, and then they picked up a cup of coffee and they offered it to you, and they went, and then a year later you say, coffee? Because your brain is the job, okay? Your brain will learn. And so, even though it's different, you can eventually get to a point where, like my spouse's voice, it now sounds like I remember. You have memory that helps with this. That's one thing. My technology can make it less bad. Your technology between your ears can make it better. Okay? If you decide that those two realities are bad, then they're bad. if you decide that those two realities are information to allow you to find your way out of the woods, then that's all they are, is information. The power of those two realities is yours to decide, not mine. Okay? Now, the world of music is bigger than your record collection. Remember that. You don't have to buy new records, but you have to remember that this is not the only world of music, or this, or this, or this. And just like you are all doing better than you did last week with your hearing, because you're still practicing and your brain is still learning, music can get better and better. I guarantee you, especially with the results that you gave me, that there is music for everyone in this room that is successful. Even if you don't know it yet, you can have music, and it's my job to get out of your way and stop interfering with that. So we have a few minutes for questions, or they're going to kick me out. I'm not sure which.
In 1 minute.
1 minute.
Because the closing is starting as
Okay.
well.
Okay. Yes. And I'll be around until the end of tomorrow, so you can ask me questions if you need me to. But go.
Just a small question. I have tinnitus,
Yes.
a lot of different frequencies.
Yes.
And when I started your program, does that worsen my tinnitus, or is it?
Nope. The biggest thing with tinnitus, and we'll talk more about it later if you want, is it's there, and if you have a negative reaction to it, it makes its own decision how loud it is. If you have a neutral reaction to it, you decide how loud it is. And so maybe you just make it part of the band. It's the bass player who's over there. We always ignore the bass player. Okay. Any other questions? No. How about that? We made it before a minute.
Woo!
Well,
We have a folder of greeting, and I think
Oh,
everyone
thank
is
you.
over here. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is a lamp, and it's in the sign of I love you.
I love it.
And it's in multiple colors,
I like it.
so you can match it with a blouse
With my-
or
yes.
any way you want it.
Yes,
So-
very much. Thank you very much. I was hoping I would get a T-shirt that says "Don't forget the triangle," but I'll take it.
Oh yeah.
All right, thank you very much for your attention. As I said, I'll be here until tomorrow morning, so if you have questions, you grab me outside. I'm happy to answer them.
The offside.